Worst case scenario is the latest full-length album from Altarage, and we could debate what constitutes a full-length album, but I didn't feel like their last album constituted one for the way that it was composed. So we'll call it the third or the fourth or however you want to decide that. But this is an experimental or avant-garde death metal band who have had elements of black metal as well as noise and dark ambient and a lot of other influences in their sound over time. This is a Spanish band, and one who featured one fellow who was in an early 90s death metal band named Burial that you most people wouldn't know even if you had gone looking for it, but you might possibly know his band Horn of the Rhino, who were popular in maybe the early 2010s or so. With a sludge thrash sort of high on fire-esque sound, which is comparable to Lair of the Minotaur and that kind of thing. So eventually he picked up a death metal project, and it was a blackened death metal project to start. It was sludge oriented in some ways. It was a little bit like Portal meets Ulcerate of the time, and that's where they started. It was kind of a big notable debut on a big underground label, and their sound evolved in that direction for two records. The production became more professional on that second LP, and that's kind of where I started to lose interest. I'd sort of started to notice the band. I picked up that second record, and it was going in a direction that was less interesting to me. So by the time The Approaching Roar came out, it was kind of like Portal Light or a more approachable version of what bands like Portal and Deathspell Omega had been doing for about 10 years at that point. So I never really cued into what this band did in any serious way personally. Um, so then they came out with Succumb, and I think the reason I'm giving this history is that the main reason why I decided to review this record is because I sort of became a fan with Succumb, and I bought their last record, Sol Corrupto, and then this one sort of blindly because I trusted what they would do next. And I think it's been interesting seeing each of these records try to do something profoundly different with a little bit different and more raw and sort of genuine production values. So what we'll do is we'll get to this latest record and see what's kind of new with this band, but what's always kind of been. So there are elements of grindcore that are deep set in a lot of what Altarage does. They enjoy they creating a little bit of a chaotic but also sort of sludge metal braced doomed feeling, and you get some of that on this record, but most of it is sort of uh, playing with rhythms and riffs in a almost a psychedelic fashion, using repetition and movement to create progressions that are entertaining. And I think that has a lot to do with less so with Portal nowadays and more of their own thing. And that does mean that it's kind of a chuggy, down-tuned, heavy sound meant to work in a live setting with just two or three people. And that means a lot of long and droning pieces on this album in particular that reflect some of the shorter bits and pieces we've gotten since Succumb. Now, Succumb was a very loud, professionally recorded, and just 2 hours of pure excess. And what they've been doing with every release since is toning it down and exploring other types of music. And what they explore here is more to do with bits of industrial or post-industrial metal that have dark ambiance and themes to them, which are conveyed through different forms of either sound recordings or different beats and things like that that change the register of the band in an interesting way. I wouldn't say that interesting. I think when I bought Soul Corrupto and it showed up and it it just wasn't substantial enough to have warranted like the $30 price that it was. And apart from the beautiful layout design of the LP, it was a bit of a wash for me. So I was glad to find that this record is more substantial in most ways. There's a couple of really fast, like I said, grinding, shorter songs that remind you that this is where that band came from. And then there's more experimental pieces throughout on the longer form that are both noisome and different in the way they approach rhythm. So this is a different thing, but it's kind of a return to what you would want as a more clear follow-up to Succumb. I don't know that it feels more substantive to me. I think it just feels like something a little bit different, and it's a fairly short record compared to the last. I'm not this huge fan of this band, but I do think this was a really interesting record for September, and it gets a moderately high recommendation because it kept me entertained as I sort of discovered the details of it, and then once I sort of sat back with it more casually, I sort of got the effect they were going with. And if you like just kind of guitar music that is abstract and eerie, this is a good time. So I'd recommend it on that level. So go ahead and check out the review to see what I had to write about it. And the album has been out for a couple of weeks.